Welcome to the Labor Force Podcast, where we talk about the rise of labor militancy and the fact that capitalism is a rotten deal. I'm your host, Mike Strukin, proud member of New York State United Teachers. Yes, we do have a peace plan with Iran, but that only supposedly will end hostilities militarily speaking. Here at home, the recurring hostility is the economy, which looks fine until you try living in it. For months, Americans have been told the economy remains resilient. The unemployment rate remains relatively low, corporate profits are strong, the stock market continues to reach new highs. But if you've been grocery shopping, filled up your gas tank, booked a flight, or simply tried to make your paycheck last till the end of the month, that story probably feels disconnected from reality. A recent report from PBS NewsHour highlights what many workers are already experiencing firsthand. Even if the fighting subsides, the higher prices triggered by the conflict are likely to stick around. Analysts say gas, groceries, airfare, and other essentials won't quickly return to previous levels because supply chains take time to recover and businesses rarely rush to lower prices once consumers have adjusted to paying more. Fertilizer shortages caused by disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz are expected to keep food costs elevated well into next year, while airlines that raised fares during the crisis have little incentive to bring them back down. In other words, the economic pain will probably outlast the war itself. That reality connects directly to another troubling development. A recent analysis from the New York Times titled, "Wages are falling, wealth is surging, no wonder Americans are unhappy," points to a stark contradiction at the heart of today's economy. While rising energy prices have erased roughly a year and a half of inflation-adjusted wage gains for the average worker, the wealthiest Americans continue accumulating fortunes on a scale previously unimaginable. The article notes that as Elon Musk became the world's first trillionaire following SpaceX's public debut, inflation-adjusted hourly wages fell for a third consecutive month. Meanwhile, labor's share of the national income has fallen for decades and recently reached a record low. The result is an economy where stock portfolios soar, while workers increasingly feel like they're running in place. As economist Stephanie Stancheva observed, many Americans look at soaring wealth at the top and conclude not that prosperity is spreading, but that they're falling further behind. And if workers are feeling uneasy, there may be good reasons. According to an analysis from 24/7 Wall Street, warning signs are beginning to accumulate across the broader economy. Economic growth has slowed considerably, consumer confidence remains fragile, business investment is weakening, and recession indicators are flashing more frequently. While economists disagree about whether a downturn is imminent, the concern is no longer confined to fringe voices. Increasingly, analysts are asking whether consumers can continue carrying an economy that depends so heavily on household spending at a time when real wages are under pressure and debt burdens remain elevated. And the consequences of that insecurity are showing up far beyond economic statistics. In The Nation, writer Malcolm Harris explores the rise of what has become known as BrokeTok, social media communities where millions of people share strategies for surviving financial hardship. These aren't isolated stories of personal mismanagement. They're collective accounts of people working and doing everything they're supposed to do while still struggling to achieve basic stability. The popularity of this content reflects something deeper than economic anxiety. It reflects a growing realization that for many Americans, insecurity is becoming a permanent feature of life rather than a temporary setback. Now you can find lots of examples, but here's one that's just emblematic of how this whole idea of earning enough to live shouldn't be so complicated. Tell me on the other side of this clip whether you feel motivated or reassured.
One of the side hustles that I do is my business is now an Amazon Hub delivery partnership with Amazon, which means Amazon will actually deliver packages from Amazon to my business, and then I come and collect them, and then I deliver them. And I got so many questions about this. A lot of people thought this was fake. This is real. I promise. This is something that I actually signed my restaurant for, as well as a home-based business for. Y'all, there's so many cars and people around me, so this is a little awkward. Anyways, you can also go to the Amazon website to see this. But basically, this is a way for you and your business to actually earn a little bit of extra income because this is a side hustle. Now, in order for you to sign up, you do have to have an LLC. Basically, any EIN number that you have with your business, that's good. Like, that's what makes you a business. That's what you can use to sign up. This is available in lots of different countries, not just the USA. However, there are only some zip codes that are open right now because of based off the amount of packages that are received there. So if this is something that you guys want to do or sign up for, I do have a link in the bio. It's the very top link in my bio that you want to fill out. You can also find all the information that you need there. But please shoot me a message as well if you do have questions. All right, so let's answer some of the questions that I have been getting a lot. So what are the Amazon packages? How far do you have to go? Like, is this actually worth it? So I did not want to sign up at first because I thought that I would have to deliver to packages all over like my county, honestly. Like even my Eagle Mountain like city, this is huge. And I didn't want to have to do that. That would be too much gas. However, it's only within a half mile of your business. My restaurant business, we get about 31 to 41 packages every single package. They drop them off in one big bundle between 8 a.m. and 1 p.m. every single day that you have signed up. So we personally have signed up Monday through Friday. So those are when the packages come. Saturday and Sunday are the days that we have off. And then usually it only takes me about an hour. Yesterday, it took me only 30 minutes to do all my packages. I had 31. Today, I have 37 packages, so I will see how long it takes me. But it usually only takes me an hour or less. Very, very few times when I've had over 40 packages has it taken me like an hour and 15 minutes. And again, this is by myself in my little Ford Taurus. Now, say you have a business, but your zip code is not available for this partnership quite yet. They will be opening new stuff. This is kind of a newer program to Amazon. So once you do submit, they will email you once that place opens up. Now, how you are paid, they do a direct deposit. That's something that you actually will figure out with Amazon. They have a whole thing that they'll go through. This is not something that I am in charge of. Woo! This is an Amazon thing, not a me thing. Now, you are paid per package that you deliver. Now, payment depends on the location that you're in. Amazon will send you those payment details that you get. My understanding is between like $1.30 to $1.50. So because we have two different businesses, one business gets a little less packages because we're not in like a huge area. Well, my restaurant business does get a few more packages. So we make anywhere between $159 to like $300. And that's every week. But talk with an accountant before doing this. Anyways, if you're interested, that link is linked in my bio.
Notice she said the pay rate is her understanding, not a fixed amount per package she could cite from Amazon. Hope you were taking notes. Well, that theme is echoed in a powerful essay published by Time. Drawing on firsthand experience working in a grocery store, the author describes witnessing American inequality up close, one checkout lane at a time. The essay highlights how inflation affects people differently depending on their income. For affluent shoppers, higher prices are frustrating. For working class families, they can mean putting items back on the shelf, skipping meals, or choosing between groceries and other necessities. The grocery store becomes a kind of economic microscope, revealing who has flexibility and who doesn't. And increasingly, more people are finding themselves on the wrong side of that divide. Meanwhile, energy executives are warning that additional pressure could still be coming. According to reporting from the streets, industry leaders have privately expressed concern that global oil inventories have been drawn down at unusually rapid rates since disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz began. Some executives argue that current gas prices don't yet fully reflect underlying supply shortages and caution that inventories are approaching levels that could trigger another surge in prices if disruptions continue. Whether those forecasts prove accurate or not, the message from the industry is clear. Workers shouldn't assume relief at the pump is guaranteed anytime soon. And perhaps the most revealing sign of economic strain comes from an unexpected place, Dollar General. During a recent earnings call, CEO Todd Vassos reported that the retailer's fastest growing customer group is now households earning more than $100,000 per year. In other words, families that would traditionally be considered comfortably middle class or even upper middle class are increasingly shopping at discount stores in search of lower prices. Vassos attributed much of that shift to persistent inflation and rising fuel costs. The story here isn't that Americans have stopped spending. It's that they're spending differently because they have to. More people are trading down, hunting for bargains, and adjusting their expectations to fit tighter budgets. And not to mention the other bugaboo we've been dealing with, utility costs. According to a new analysis cited by CBS News, Americans are expected to face record-high electricity bills this summer, as rising power prices combine with hotter weather to drive up air conditioning use. The National Energy Assistance Directors Association estimates that the average U.S. household will spend nearly $800 on electricity between June and September, about 10.5% more than last summer. The increase is being driven by several factors, including growing energy demand, investments in upgrading the aging electric grid, and the rapid expansion of energy-intensive AI data centers. Electricity costs have risen significantly in recent years, with average monthly electric bills increasing roughly 23% between 2019 and 2024. The financial impact will vary by region. Arizona households are projected to face the highest summer cooling costs, averaging more than $1,000 for the season, while residents of Washington and North Dakota are expected to see some of the lowest bills, under $500. The report notes that these higher utility costs are arriving at a time when many Americans are already under financial strain. Roughly 1 in 6 households is behind on utility payments. Experts warn that rising temperatures and higher electricity prices are creating an affordability challenge, particularly for lower-income families who may struggle to keep their homes safely cooled during periods of extreme heat. Well, maybe your teenager should find a job and get a head start on American capitalism, like so many generations before. In 2026, maybe not so fast. The AP reports that the summer job search has become increasingly difficult for American teenagers as entry-level opportunities decline. 17-year-old Jalen Chester, an A-plus student and aspiring engineer, has applied for dozens of jobs without success. Quote, "I'm not unemployed because I'm incompetent. I'm unemployed because nobody's hiring." Her experience reflects a larger trend. Only about 1/3 of 16 to 19-year-olds were employed last summer, compared with roughly 60% in the late 1970s. Economists say jobs at the beginning of the career ladder have increasingly disappeared. Quote, "The opportunities for workers at the start of the career ladder started to dry up," says Nicole Boschot of ZipRecruiter. Analysts warn this summer could bring the lowest teen hiring level since tracking began in 1948. Jobs traditionally filled by teenagers, especially in food service and retail, have become more competitive as employers eliminate entry-level positions and prioritize experienced workers. Quote, "A lot of the entry-level roles that once existed simply don't any longer," says John Little of Insperity. Teenagers across the country report similar frustrations, including unanswered applications and were hiring signs that don't lead to any jobs. Connor Vukolich, who applied widely without success, says, quote, "There's all these we're hiring signs, but no one's actually hiring." The difficulty finding summer work is leaving many young people questioning whether the traditional path of gaining early job experience still exists. Some point to AI, cautious hiring, and employers' preference for experienced workers as reasons teens are being shut out. After applying to more than 100 jobs, 16-year-old Demi Naji finally started working at Sonic. She's thrilled, but when a friend who turned 15 started applying for work, Naji had to be honest. "I had to calmly put her down and say, 'You're not going to get it,'" Naji says. "It's just not going to happen." All told, Americans are being asked to absorb higher prices, economic uncertainty, AI-driven fears about future employment, widening inequality, and commoditized weather impacts all at the same time. Our youngest workers are struggling, yet much of the wealth generated during this period continues flowing upward. Workers are told the economy is strong, but many experience that strength only as rising stock prices they don't own and corporate profits they don't share. The problem isn't simply inflation. It's not simply gas prices. It's not simply the possibility of recession. It's the growing gap between economic success as measured on Wall Street and economic security as experienced on Main Street. Because when wages fall, prices rise, and trillionaires multiply, people begin to question whether the economy is working for them at all. And increasingly, that's exactly what they're doing. So if the first half of this story is about workers feeling squeezed by forces they can't control, higher prices, falling real wages, growing inequality, and fears about the future, the next question becomes, what does all that mean for the American dream itself? Because for generations, the promise was straightforward. Work hard, support your family, buy a home, raise your children, and gradually build a more secure life than the one you started with. Today, that promise looks very different. A new report from the Pew Research Center shows just how dramatically family economics have changed over the last several decades. In 1970, the dominant American household model was a single breadwinner, usually a father working full-time while a mother focused primarily on caregiving responsibilities. Today, that arrangement has become the exception rather than the rule. Most households now depend on 2 incomes simply to maintain financial stability. Dual-earner families have become the norm, while single-income households have steadily declined. In many cases, both parents are working because they want additional luxury spending. They're working because one income no longer provides the economic security it once did. That shift tells us something important about the economy we've been discussing. When politicians and economists point to rising household income statistics, those numbers often reflect more hours worked by more family members rather than dramatically improved living standards. Many households have compensated for stagnant wages by adding a second paycheck rather than by earning substantially more from the first one. In other words, families didn't necessarily become wealthier. They became more dependent on work. And that creates new vulnerabilities. When housing costs rise, when healthcare costs rise, when childcare expenses explode, or when one worker loses a job, there's often less margin for error than previous generations had. The result is that economic growth can coexist with growing insecurity. That's where a recent USA Today report on the American dream becomes particularly revealing. Survey data cited in the article suggests that Americans haven't abandoned the dream altogether, but they have redefined it. For much of the 20th century, the American dream was closely associated with upward mobility, home ownership, and accumulated wealth. Increasingly, however, Americans describe the dream in more modest terms: financial stability, freedom from debt, the ability to pay bills without constant anxiety, having enough time for family, being able to retire someday. Think about that shift for a moment. The dream hasn't gotten bigger, it's gotten smaller. A generation ago, people dreamed about prosperity. Today, they dream about stability. And that may be the most important economic indicator of all. Because when millions of people begin redefining success downward, not because their aspirations changed, but because their expectations changed, that tells us something profound about the economic environment they're living in. It suggests that insecurity has become normalized. Viewed alongside everything we discussed, the rising prices, the shrinking purchasing power of wages, the growth of discount store shopping among six-figure earners, the explosion of online communities dedicated to financial survival, and the concentration of wealth at the very top, a pattern begins to emerge. The American dream isn't disappearing, it's being renegotiated. Workers are adapting to an economy that increasingly asks more of them while offering less certainty in return. Families are working more hours, relying on more earners, carrying more financial risk, and redefining success around goals that previous generations often took for granted. The question facing the country isn't whether Americans still believe in the dream. The question is whether our economic institutions are still capable of delivering it. Because if the benchmark for success shifts from prosperity to merely getting by, then the challenge isn't a crisis of expectations, it's a crisis of opportunity. And until working people see greater security, stronger bargaining power, and a fair share of the wealth they help create, that crisis is likely to continue, regardless of what the stock market says. Always and forever to the fight back. According to reporting by Workday magazine, federal prosecutors have indicted 15 Minnesota activists in connection with organizing against ICE and Border Patrol operations during the Trump administration's Operation Metro Surge. Among those charged are trade unionists who participated in worker assemblies held at the United Labor Center in Minneapolis. Prosecutors allege that involvement in these assemblies was evidence of a broader criminal conspiracy, and all 15 defendants face charges of conspiracy to impede or injure a federal officer. Labor activists and union leaders argue that the indictments represent an attempt to criminalize opposition to federal immigration enforcement and suppress labor organizing. Union leaders strongly condemn the arrests. Kieran Knudsen, president of the Communication Workers of America Local 7250, said, quote, "Trade unionists active in worker assemblies are among those who were arrested," adding that the unionists involved are stand-up people who believe in solidarity and outstanding union activists in their union and workplace. Minneapolis Federation of Educators President Marcia Howard confirmed that union members, including educators, were among those detained, saying, quote, "I find it telling that they're going after unionists, including educators I know of right now, that they're going after workers. I'm really pissed off." Howard argued that the prosecutions are meant to intimidate workers, stating, quote, "I think this is intended to make workers shy away from being vociferous in their opposition to state-sponsored violence." The worker assemblies brought together hundreds of union and non-union workers to discuss resistance to ICE operations, labor solidarity, and broader political issues. Knudsen described the gatherings as an attempt to create a democratic space for workers, to be part of decision-making about how the workers' movement participates in anti-ICE resistance, and in the labor movement in general. He emphasized that the assemblies were not controlled by any single political organization and were sponsored by multiple unions. Labor organizations across Minnesota issued statements condemning the indictments. The St. Paul Federation of Educators Local 28 called the prosecutions, quote, "another attempt to threaten Minnesotans into silence and complicity." And Minneapolis Regional Labor Federation President Chelsea Goblew said that working people from all walks of life had exercised their constitutional rights while opposing ICE operations, and that several union members were among those affected by the federal charges. And Minnesota AFL-CIO President Bernie Burnham similarly argued that the administration was attempting to break worker solidarity, declaring, quote, "This past winter, the Trump administration tried to break Minnesotan solidarity and basic sense of decency by flooding our state with armed agents. They failed. Now they're trying to break us in the courtroom. They will fail again." The indictments are part of a broader federal crackdown on anti-ICE organizing, in which activities protected by the First Amendment are being treated as evidence of criminal conduct. Supporters of the defendants contend that the prosecutions are politically motivated efforts to discourage dissent and labor activism, while federal prosecutors maintain that the charges are based on alleged actions that went beyond lawful protest. Well, as reported by Labor Notes, union carpenter and folk singer Emmett Doyle is one of the 15. Here's his first-person account of the arrest. "When I got to my cell after they took me, I didn't know who else was targeted in the sweep. I saw one person I knew and then was put into a cell alone. Not knowing what else to do to pass the time, I began singing Fields of Athenry.
By a lonely prison wall, I heard a young girl calling, "Michael, they have taken you away, for you stole Trevelyan's corn, so the young might see the morn. Now a prison ship lies waiting in the bay."
When I was done with that, I sang the Ballad of Joe McDonnell, Bold Robert Emmett, Jim Jones in Botany Bay, and Our Lads in Crumlin Jail.
Oh, my name is Joe McDonnell. From Belfast town I came, that city I will never see again. For in the town of Belfast I spent many happy days. I love that town in oh so many ways.
The struggle is over, the boys are defeated. Old Ireland surrounded with sadness and gloom. We were defeated and shamefully treated, and I, Robert Emmett, awaiting my doom. Drawn and quartered, sure that was my sentence, but soon I will shield them, no coward am I.
Oh, listen for a moment, lads, and hear me tell the tale. How o'er the sea from England shore I was compelled to sail. The jury said he's guilty, sir, and said that judge, said he, for life, Jim Jones, I'm sending you across the stormy sea.
Ireland's fight for freedom, boys. The North has played its part. Though Freedom's Day has still to dawn, we've never yet lost heart. We'll fight it out until the end. We'll fight for we cannot fail. We know we'll win, although they have our lads in Crumlin Jail.
I was halfway through The Town I Love So Well, a about to choke up thinking about Metro Surge and with their tanks and their guns. Oh my God, what they have done to the town I love so well.
When I returned, how my eyes have burned to see how a town could be brought to its knees by the armored cars and the bombed out bars and the gas that hangs on to every breeze. Now the army's installed by that old gas yard wall, and the damned barbed wire gets higher and higher. With their tanks and their guns, oh my God, what have they done to the town I loved so well?
When I heard a shout down the hallway, "Play Dick Blizzard!"
Come raise up a glass for 2726. When against the ice Nazis came a blizzard of dicks. At Whipple we whipped dildos onto their vans. Stand hard against the tyrants, the measure of man. The people faced down those tyrannical fucks and yeeted the penises onto their trucks. We didn't throw Molotovs, bottles, or rocks, but we pounded them down with the silicone cocks. Come raise up a glass for 2726. When against the ice Nazis came a blizzard of dicks. At Whipple we whipped dildos onto their vans. To stand hard against the tyrants, the measure of man. Those icemen are feds, but they called on the state. They pulled out the sheriffs to collaborate. They fitted the sheriffs and rolled them on down and covered themselves so they could go to town. Come raise up a glass for 2726. When against the ice Nazis came a blizzard of dicks. At Whipple we whipped dildos onto their vans. To stand hard against the tyrants, the measure of man. The sheriff stood at attention, so stiff and so proud. They swung their hardwood and they beat off the crowd. They pulled out the handcuffs, we cried, yes indeed. You can bury us, daddy, but we are the seeds. Come raise up a glass for 2726. When against the ice Nazis came a blizzard of dicks. At Whipple we whipped dildos onto their vans. To stand hard against the tyrants, the measure of man. We're getting our folks back, we're giving them care, but icemen have nightmares, we're filling the air. Our dildos that shoot rainbow streams as they hit, and that's the most action that they'll ever get. Come raise up a glass for 2726. When against the ice Nazis came a blizzard of dicks. At Whipple we whipped dildos onto their vans. To stand hard against the tyrants, the measure of man. So feds, learn your lesson, so sticky it sticks. If you fuck with us, you'll eat a blizzard of dicks. Those icemen regretted that they ever came, like the world regrets that their dads did the same.
A chorus of laughter followed, and voices of friends and loved ones. Suddenly, I wasn't alone anymore. After a short time, they processed me and put me in a cell with some dearly beloved friends of mine. One of them, an older friend whose wisdom has always been a source of strength in trying times, turned to me and asked if I could help him remember all the verses to Solidarity Forever. Within minutes, all the cells up and down the hall were singing the full original IWW version with increasing gusto.
When the union's inspiration through the workers' blood shall run, there can be no power greater anywhere beneath the sun. Yet what force on earth is weaker than the feeble strength of one? But the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong.
Not wanting to stop the fun, I led an English language rendition of Bella Ciao. As we got done with it, I heard a voice from the direction of the cell I'd been held in alone earlier. It was a gruff, loud, and enthusiastic singing voice I had heard many late nights at the Circle of Song, singing Bella Ciao back at us in Italian. Then, hearing our feeble attempts to remember the Spanish words to A las barricadas, he sang it in Spanish. Sing Men Behind the Wire, he shouted down the hall at us. So we sang the anti-ICE version of the old Irish Republican prisoner support song, which we'd written during Metro Surge. That's how I discovered who else was in jail with us yesterday. We whistled Colonel Bogey's March on our way to the hearing.
Smart up there now. Hey, company! On time!
Speaking of labor notes, their 2026 conference depicted a labor movement responding to attacks on workers' rights, ICE enforcement, and the rise of AI with renewed organizing and solidarity. Despite tornadoes disrupting travel, nearly 4,700 activists made it to Chicago. Amazon worker Xavier Villarreal said he attended seeking courage, explaining that meeting people who have been in the fight longer than me will help me strive to become a better organizer. Speakers emphasized that workers must move beyond defense and build power. Labor Notes Barbara Mataloni said, quote, "We're not simply resisting. We're creating a world that bosses and capital try to deny us." Judy Gonzalez of the New York State Nurses Association argued that organizers must translate demoralization into militancy, while federal worker Paul Asanibi warned, quote, "The attack on federal workers is an attack on all working people." The conference highlighted labor's role in broader social struggles. Minnesota teachers described using strike-style organizing to support immigrant families during ICE operations, with organizer Maria Solis stating, quote, "January 23rd would not have happened without labor." Workers also celebrated recent victories, including the historic strike at the JBS meatpacking plant in Colorado. UFCW Representative Tajeli Moyes said, quote, "A strike is a school. It teaches workers who they are." While worker Nathaniel Mann reflected, "It's the first time I've seen people smile there." AI emerged as a major concern. Amazon worker Juan Morales called AI the burning question of the labor movement, arguing that unions need contract protections now rather than waiting for legislation. Participants warned that automation and algorithmic management could deepen inequality unless workers gain democratic control over how the technology is deployed. Throughout the conference, attendees stressed the importance of solidarity. Mann said the experience helped him realize, "I'm not just a worker at JBS. I'm part of something that spans the whole country and across the whole world." Amazon organizer Afonso Martinez Valero captured the conference's central message. "The most powerful company in the world still has a problem. They need us. And while they need us, we have power." As electrical worker Emily Lumpkin concluded, there are no permanent victories and there are no permanent defeats, but there is always a way forward. Here's a member of UAW Local 2093 out of Three Rivers, Michigan, where workers at Dodge Corporation won a new contract after a 2-week strike.
My name's John Kraus. I'm with the UAW Local 2093 in Three Rivers, Michigan. And I'm here to tell you a story that every worker in this country deserves to hear. Before I start, I need to give a special thanks to UAW Region 1D team of Frank Hines, Zuck, Dawes, as well as Sean Fain and his strategies team. They're a major part of this story that I'm telling you today. And it's a story of a local that spent over 18 years of being told to sit down, be quiet, and accept less. It's a story of how those workers finally stood up, locked arms, and changed the balance of power inside of American Axle. Over the last decade, this company has generated over $8.4 billion in profits. Over $1 billion of sales per year comes out of our facility alone. While our members struggle to afford groceries, rent, and basic necessities. During the same time frame, the CEO pocketed $111 million, and the top 5 executives made $231 million. Exactly. That's not a business model, that's extraction. And while the executives are cashing checks big enough to buy small countries, some of our members are sleeping in their cars. Not because they lack work ethic, not because they lack pride, but because wages were pushed so low that full-time workers can no longer afford to live. Then we had a tornado come and rip through our small town. Houses, businesses, and lives destroyed. And the company, silence. They never reached out, not a message, not a call, not a shred of humanity. They were only grateful that it didn't touch their facility. It was the union that reached out to them because we had associates concerned about getting in trouble for not making it to work while they were dealing with life-changing events. The company's response was, "We will take the absences under consideration." They backed up their lack of caring by doing nothing in our community. But Local 2093, they put the boots on and hit the ground running and tried helping put the community back together. Yeah. This is what corporate greed looks like in real life. That's what 18 years of suppression looks like. In 2008, we had members watch their wages get cut in half from $29 an hour to $14.50 overnight. We were told we would recover when the company recovered. That day never came. The company recovered, the executives recovered, the shareholders recovered, but the workers, the people that saved the company, were still left behind. Today, after all the sacrifices, our top wage is $22 an hour. And during our current contract negotiations, the company came in demanding concessions across every article in our contract and a top out wage of $24 an hour after 4 years. After all we gave the company, they still wanted more from the people that had the least. But here's where the story turns. We had a contract set to expire on May 31st, 2026. And our members were ready. Because we knew something to be true here. We had power. The leverage was ours. In Three Rivers, we build axles for GM's most profitable vehicles that they have out there. They're trucks. We love our trucks in America. And Local 2093 knew that with no axles, there would be no trucks. So when it came time to take a strike vote, we had over 90% of our membership Over 90% of our membership showed up to vote, and they voted it in at a 98% yes. And 100% of the members walked out. That wasn't just a vote, it was a roar. That was a workforce saying, we remember from 2008 to the present, we remember broken promises, and we are done being silent. This membership demanded no concessions. They demanded a better work-life balance. They demanded more time off. And then came the rallying cry to go above what we lost 18 years ago, $30 by 30. 30 by 30. I'm proud to stand here today and say we have a current TA that we'll be rolling out to our members has met every single one of those demands. Not because the company suddenly found generosity, not because the economy shifted, but because the membership of Local 2093 rediscovered their power. Ladies and gentlemen, Local 2093 lit a signal fire. What started as a fight for our local became a fight for every worker in this country who has been told to settle for less while executives take more. It is a fight for every local that is being ignored, dismissed, or underestimated. It became a fight for every worker who's been told to live to fight another day and your time will come. Well, that time never came, so we took it. And that's why I'm here today at the Labor Notes Conference, because this room understands something that corporate world hopes we'll never figure out. When workers move together, there's no force in this country that can stop us. Local 2093 is not special because we are lucky. We are not special because we are unique. We are special because we remember who we are. Union. A union that stands up, a union that fights back, a union that wins. We decided to stop playing defense and take on a new approach. We changed how our union fought and how we changed what our union won. I am honored to represent the UAW and the incredible men and women of Local 2093. They showed the labor movement what solidarity looks like in practice, in real time. They showed that courage is contagious, and they showed that when workers decide they have had enough, the world changes. Local 2093 decided this is our moment, this is our movement, and this is what solidarity looks like. So everybody here understands that we're on strike, right? We took that stand and we walked out. And I feel bad that when I'm done up here that we have to head back, because I also told one of my international reps to come with me today. Okay? And we have a lot going on back at home. But I would like everybody to do something for me today. Just two things. When I say no axles, will you say no trucks? No axles? No trucks. No axles? No trucks. No axles? No trucks. One more thing. When I say we fight, you say we win. When we fight, we win. When we fight, we win. When we fight, we win. In honor of my chairman back home that has worked his butt off during this campaign, the last thing you would say after that is, you're goddamn right. Thank you, solidarity forever.
So all this being said, and being 46 years old myself, when people say midlife crisis, you can almost picture the stereotype: a flashy car, a sudden hobby, a dramatic reinvention. But a large international research project suggests that in the United States, the real midlife crisis looks a lot less cinematic and a lot more everyday. It's loneliness, financial strain, chronic stress, and for many people, a sense that their well-being is slipping at the exact life stage when they're carrying the most responsibility. The research compares people across 17 countries, focusing on how midlife has been changing over time. And the headline is pretty stark: Americans entering middle age, especially those born in the 1960s and early 70s, are reporting more loneliness and more depressive symptoms than earlier U.S. generations. They're also reporting worse memory and less physical strength. In other words, it's not just mood, it's mind and body too. What makes this especially important is that it's not simply a universal trend of modern life. In several other wealthy countries, midlife health and well-being have actually improved over time, rather than declined. Nordic countries are often highlighted as places where these outcomes look better. So the obvious question is, why is the U.S. drifting in a different direction? A psychologist at Arizona State University, Frank Infernum, and his colleagues point to a cluster of pressures that pile up in midlife. Think about what the typical middle-aged years can include: building or maintaining a career, raising children, helping teenagers launch into adulthood, and at the same time starting to support aging parents. It's the sandwich period for a lot of families. If the systems around you are sturdy, if you have predictable support, those demands are still hard, but they're more manageable. If the systems around you are thin, everything becomes heavier. One major difference the researchers emphasize is family policy. Since the early 2000s, many European countries have increased spending on family benefits. The U.S., by comparison, hasn't made the same kind of move. And that difference shows up in practical ways: fewer supports like direct cash assistance for families with children, less consistent income support during parental leave, and less access to affordable subsidized childcare. Now, it's easy to think of these policies as for young parents, but the study's argument is that they echo into midlife. If childcare is unaffordable for years, if time away from work after having a child is financially risky, if family support is patchy, the long-term effect isn't just a tough season, it can be a decade plus of stress. And the data suggests that in countries with stronger family support, adults report lower loneliness and smaller increases in loneliness across generations. In the U.S., loneliness keeps rising over time. The next pressure point is healthcare. The U.S. spends an enormous amount on healthcare overall, but the experience for individuals can still be marked by high out-of-pocket costs and inconsistent affordability. And this matters in midlife because this is often when medical needs become more frequent: checkups you should get, chronic issues that start to emerge, medications that become routine, specialist visits that suddenly seem necessary. If the cost of care is high, people can delay preventative visits, skip appointments, or avoid treatments until problems become more serious. Even for people who do get care, the financial aftershock, bills, deductibles, surprise costs can create a constant background anxiety. The researchers connect these financial pressures to increased stress, worry, and even medical debt. So midlife isn't just about managing your health, it can become about negotiating with the price of your health. Then there's income inequality, which has grown in the U.S. since the early 2000s, while staying stable or even decreasing in parts of Europe. And this isn't just an abstract economic statistic. Inequality can shape daily life by increasing the risk of poverty, narrowing pathways to move up the socioeconomic ladder, and limiting access to education, stable employment, and social services. Over time, those constraints can show up as poor physical health, more psychological distress, and more disconnection from supportive social environments. The study also raises cultural and structural differences that can make it harder to stay connected in the U.S. Americans tend to move more and often live farther away from extended family. That mobility can be good for opportunity, but can also make relationships harder to maintain. If you're changing cities for work, if your friends are doing the same, if your parents live states away, then the simple logistics of building a reliable community get complicated. And if you're also trying to coordinate caregiving, either for kids or for older relatives, distance turns to friction, and friction turns to isolation. Layer on top of that a sense of financial vulnerability. Compared with earlier generations, today's middle-aged Americans, on average, may have accumulated less wealth by this stage of life and may feel less secure. The researchers point to forces like wage stagnation and the lingering effects of the Great Recession as pieces of that story. In several European countries, stronger safety nets can soften those blows. In the U.S., the shock often lands more directly on the household. One of the most surprising findings in this research is about memory. You might assume that because education levels have generally increased over time, newer generations would show stronger cognitive outcomes. But the researchers found the opposite pattern in the U.S. Episodic memory, your ability to remember events and experiences, appears to be declining in midlife, even though educational attainment is higher. And importantly, this pattern wasn't showing up in most comparable countries. So what could overpower the usual productive effect of education? The authors point toward chronic stress, financial insecurity, and higher rates of cardiovascular risk factors, things like blood pressure issues and other health risks that are known to affect the brain over time. The takeaway isn't that education doesn't matter, it's that education may not be enough to cancel out the wear and tear of sustained stress and instability. At this point, it'd be easy to hear all of this and think, so is this just the new normal? The researchers are clear. Doesn't have to be. These midlife outcomes aren't inevitable, and they aren't purely personal failures. That's a big theme here. Midlife well-being isn't only about individual choices. It's also about the environment people are trying to make those choices in. On the individual level, the study highlights resources that can help buffer stress, strong social support, a sense of control over your life, and positive benefits about aging. Social engagement in particular comes up as something meaningful and practical. Finding community might sound vague, but it can be very concrete. Relationships at work that go beyond small talk, a hobby group you can actually attend regularly, volunteering, faith communities, neighborhood ties, or caregiving networks where people share the load instead of carrying it alone. But the researchers also argue that we shouldn't pretend this is solely a make more friends solution. If the drivers include unaffordable childcare, expensive health care, and financial insecurity, then the fixes have to include policy. The cross-national comparison points to a pattern. Countries with stronger safety nets, things like paid leave, childcare support, and more accessible health care tend to see better midlife outcomes. So if you're in midlife right now, and it feels like you're doing everything you're supposed to do, yet it still feels harder than it should, this research offers a lens that's validating. It suggests that what you're feeling may not be a personal shortcoming. It may be the predictable result of trying to balance work, family, finances, and health in a system that offers less support than many of its peers. And if you're not in midlife yet, this matters too, because it's describing where the road can lead when stress accumulates and connection erodes. The good news in all this is that trends can change. Social ties can be strengthened. Policies can evolve. And the midlife crisis doesn't have to be a punchline or a private struggle people endure quietly. It can be a public health and social well-being issue that we understand clearly and address directly. Well, if what's in our control is to try and connect, to socialize when we can, and what is out of our control is the necessity of work, shouldn't there be a middle ground between the two? You'd say yes, but there's a strange contradiction at the heart of modern work. We have more technology than any generation in history. We have AI tools that can write, analyze, summarize, schedule, and automate tasks that once consumed hours of human labor. We were promised that this technology would give us something priceless: time. To think, create, connect with other people. But for many workers, the opposite has happened. The workdays become more intense. The expectation is not that technology will help us work less. The expectation is that technology will help us produce more. More emails, reports, meetings, output, more passwords to enter, two-factor authentication. I was at Goodyear recently getting new brakes, and before I could fork out the $750 to pay, the attendant had to enter a series of long, complicated passwords on multiple screens to get to my invoice. So somehow, we ended up with less time to simply be human. A recent essay in The Guardian makes a provocative argument. Maybe we need to bring back the 3-martini lunch, not because workers need another excuse for corporate excess, but because the old workplace had something we lost: time for genuine relationships, conversation, mentorship, and creativity. Now let's be clear. The traditional 3-martini lunch was also a symbol of privilege. It represented a corporate culture where executives could disappear for hours while many working-class employees had to punch a clock and ask permission for a bathroom break. So it's not just about romanticizing the past, but there is something worth examining, because somewhere along the way, we decided that every minute of every workday needed to be productive. The long lunch and the casual conversation disappeared. The moments when a younger worker could sit across from an experienced colleague and learn how things actually worked That disappeared too. Instead, we got the modern workplace, a calendar packed with meetings, a phone that never stops buzzing, a Slack notification at 9:47 p.m., a boss who says, "We value work-life balance," while also asking why that report wasn't finished over the weekend. And now AI enters the workplace. The irony is that artificial intelligence is supposed to make work more efficient. But instead of asking, how can we use this technology to give people more freedom, many companies are asking, how much more can we squeeze out of each employee? So the problem isn't technology. The problem is the economic system surrounding it. Because when every productivity gain becomes an excuse for higher expectations, workers don't experience liberation. They experience acceleration, burnout, and the feeling that no matter how fast they run, the finish line keeps moving. And this connects to something I talk about often on this podcast, the struggle over who benefits from economic change. When automation increases productivity, who gets the reward? Does the worker get a shorter work week, more flexibility, more time with family, more control over their life? Or does the company simply demand more? Because throughout history, productivity gains have always been a fight. The 8-hour workday wasn't handed down by generous employers. Workers organized for it. The weekend wasn't a gift from corporate America. Workers fought for it. Paid vacation, workplace safety, retirement benefits, all these came from the idea that human beings are more than units of production. And maybe that's the lesson of the 3-martini lunch debate. The important question isn't whether workers should drink martinis at lunch. The important question is, do we believe workers deserve time that is not measured, monitored, and monetized? Do we believe conversation has value? Do we believe relationships matter? Do we believe creativity comes from moments when people are allowed to think, wander, and connect? Because a workplace where every second is optimized may actually become a workplace where innovation disappears. A machine can generate output, but it can't replace the human experiences that create meaning. A conversation in the hallway, a mentor giving advice, a colleague sharing a story, a team laughing together. These moments seem inefficient, but they're often where the best ideas come from. So maybe the future of work isn't about eliminating humans from the workplace. Maybe it's about remembering what humans actually contribute. Because the greatest threat of AI isn't that machines will become more like people, it's that workplaces will become more like machines. Well, that's it for this episode. Thanks for watching. To my audio people, thanks for listening. Please like and share so I can get this message out to more of our brothers and sisters. And hit that subscribe button. I'm proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network, with over 200 shows and podcasts from around the country and around the world. You can check them out at laborradionetwork.org. I'll see you next week. Solidarity always.